about yesterday. This is a very, very serious situation, as you know. And so again, I thank you. I thank you for coming back. I thank you for coming yesterday. And I thank you for taking very serious, and I know that because of the answers you gave us yesterday, this process in our judicial system. I too want to tell you the story of Jade Benning and Blaise Taylor. But as you can imagine, it's quite different. And you're going to hear over the course of this entire trial a lot of information. And if any of you are like me, it's easier to compartmentalize things so that as you hear the evidence, you can dump them in a bucket. And that way, at the end of the trial, a week or so later, it won't be so difficult to remember what you've heard. And so what I want you to do is I want you to think about things before, think about during the incident, and after the incident. Think about things before the incident, and the incident is going to be February 25th of 2023. Before the incident, during the incident, and after the incident. It will help. So let's talk about before. Before, I want you to know who Blaise Taylor was and who Jade Benning was. Blaise is the oldest of 2 children. He is the son of Evie and Trooper Taylor. Blaise has a younger sister, Star Taylor. Blaise's father is a football coach, a college football coach. And I've since learned that living a football coach's life on that level, it takes you around several places across the country. And so they traveled a lot. They lived in a lot of different places because Dad worked in a lot of different places. And Blaise got his education from the University of Arkansas, where he graduated in 3 years with his master's degree in business administration. After that, he began working. And he ended up, after a few jobs, working for the Tennessee Titans as a pro scout. That is where, here in Tennessee, is where he meets Jade. But what's also important to know is that throughout Blaise's life, even when he played football, even when he was in college, he never drank and he never did any drugs. No alcohol and no drugs ever in his life. I want to now show you who Jade Benning is and was. She was a beautiful young lady. She was an aspiring chef. And she too was from Arkansas. And she moved to Tennessee after graduating from culinary school to become a chef and work at Ernest's Hideaway Grill and Bar. But different than Blaise, Jade was involved with alcohol. And Jade was involved with drugs. And that is where they differ. But what they are alike, as you've heard, just as Blaise was casually dating young women, Jade Benning was casually dating young men. And so that is who they were before the incident. Now let's talk about Blaise and Jade and their relationship. Blaise and Jade met on Hinge, a dating app, in January of 2022. They exchanged a few messages, but never really hooked up. It went into February of 2022 when Blaise reached out to Jade, but yet she never returned the message. About a month later, she returns the message and says, "Oh, I've been busy, but it's good to speak with you." And then they went dead for a while. They didn't talk again until August of 22. In August of 22 is when they actually met up. August the 10th, they met and they had dinner. And after that, they began a relationship. They began casually dating each other. But they were not exclusive. He wasn't exclusive with her, and she wasn't exclusive with him. You will hear that he dated other women, and you will hear that she dated other men. And they were both okay with that because that was the agreement that those two adults had come to. They had agreed that they would have a sexual relationship, but they would still date other people. And as adults, you will hear that that is what they decided to do. You will hear that they probably started having sex somewhere around August. Remember, they met August 10th. So by August 23rd or so, you will hear that they probably began their sexual relationship. So from August 23rd until November 2nd, they started dating. They would see each other. They would hang out. I believe that the restaurant where Jade worked was very close to Blaise's house, and it was convenient because of their schedules for Jade to go over to Blaise's house after he got off work, after she got off work. And she would spend the night there. He would get up and go to work in the morning. She would sleep late and get up and leave whenever she got up. Now you will hear sometime around November 1st of 22. Jade believes that she may be pregnant. And you will hear that she's having a conversation with Nashville. And what they're trying to figure out is who the father is. And you will hear that they weren't sure if it was Blaise's child or if it was some guy named Des' child. And so they talked a bit, and they talked about who she was having sex with the most. And it appeared that Nigella thought that she was having sex with Des the most. But apparently, you'll be able to hear that ultimately Jade landed on Blaise. And Nigella agreed and said, "Oh, well, it must be Blaise's." And you'll hear that it is at that time that Jade makes the decision that she's going to tell Blaise that she's pregnant with his child. And so you kind of deduct, you'll be able to deduct that she did talk to Blaise around November the 4th. And on November the 4th, it is clear that she tells Blaise, "This baby is yours and not Blaise." And you'll hear that it's true that Blaise, at that time, was not ready to be a father. With the woman he met less than 90 days ago, who was casually dating other people just like he was. And he did not want to go forward with the praise. That's clear. He was 27, he wasn't married, he really didn't know her. And clearly he suggested alternative methods. And he suggested it to her because it was something that she had agreed to do with someone else in the past. But Jade wanted to keep this child. She wanted to give birth to Blaise's baby. And so what you'll hear, though, is that they had a difference of opinion and that they were at an impasse. And so clearly they had talked about it from November the 4th until November the 6th. Because on November the 6th, you will learn that it was Jade who told Blaise clearly, there's no agreement that we're going to come to here, and I'm not changing my mind. So what I suggest is you go your way, I go mine. You don't have to be involved with the baby if that's what you want to do. I will go on and I will love this baby with or without you. My next appointment is on this day. If you want to be there, you can. But if not, this is the decision that I made. You'll hear that that's the decision that Jade made for herself. Now what's important is that after that, what you won't hear is that Blaise was forcing her, pressuring her, continuously calling her or texting her, trying to force her to abort this baby. You won't hear it. You will hear that from the moment she made that decision for herself and told him, you go your way and I'll go mine, that he did not contact her again. You will hear that he honored her wishes. You will hear that he gave her the space that she asked him. But then you'll hear that some time had passed. It would have been enough time to have passed to where she had passed the stage of where abortion would be a viable option. You'll hear that he told his parents, and he told his parents that he had met a young lady by the name of Jade. She was a chef, and he was possibly going to have a child. And what you'll hear is that he then at that time, after making that decision to tell his parents, he contacted Jade on December the 31st. And she responded via text, I'm at work or what have you. And you'll see that on that very same day, she texted Nigella, her best friend, and said, you won't believe this. Because she had a missed call from Blaise. And that ultimately, on January 1st of 2023, they met up at a park at Jade's suggestion. She suggested, let's go to a park. And he honored her wishes again and met her at the park. And it appears that they sat in that park and they talked for almost 5 hours. And they had made the decision that they were going to try to get to know each other so that if the baby was in fact Blaise's, because Blaise asked for a paternity test, which made sense, that they needed to know each other if they were going to have to co-parent this child. And you will hear from Nigella herself that it was at this time that Blaise made every effort to do that, to get to know her, to participate. And so remember this is January 1st, so over the next month and a half, 3 weeks until February 25th, they dated, they saw each other, they hung out, they spent time together, and they were getting to know each other. Now you'll hear that Jade did have doctor's appointments, and she did want Blaise to attend. But what you'll hear is that she told him about one appointment, which was, in fact, February the 6th, I believe. And she was going to find out the gender of the baby on that day. And you'll hear that she asked Blaise to come. And Blaise said, I need to check to see what's going on at work. I don't know what's going on at work. And if I can make it, I will. You'll hear he didn't make it. But you'll also hear that the next appointment she had was about 4 days later, but it was for a blood test. It wasn't necessarily another actual visit, the monthly maternity visits. That one was not until March 9th. And by that time, unfortunately, she had already passed. And you'll hear that during this time that they were split, and when Blaise was dating Xavier, Jade, now knowing that she was pregnant, was dating other men as well. In fact, there were 3 other men that she was dating in December. And you'll hear that we know that for sure because she was sending naked pictures to them in December. And there were 3 men, 3 different men, that she sent naked pictures to from December the 3rd through almost towards the end of December. So yes, you will hear that they both were dating different people. Now, we'll go to February 25th of 2023. Now, what's also important to know before we get there, you'll find that Jade was involved with drugs prior to the day that this happened, prior to the day that she was diagnosed with acute cocaine toxicity that caused her death. You'll hear that she was involved with marijuana. You'll hear that she was involved with Adderall. You will hear that she was involved with the weed cartridges. I think they call it resin. You'll hear that she was involved with mushrooms, that she would take mushrooms. And you will hear that she also drank a lot until she was drunk oftentimes. In fact, you'll hear that during maybe a day or so before she and Nigella was having this conversation about who was the father, and it was Blaise's, that she was inviting Nigella to share mushrooms with her. And you'll hear on the same day that she learned that she was pregnant, that Nigella was asking her to call Des to reach out for some drugs. Fast forward to February 25th. On this day, during the incident, you'll hear that Jade, in fact, did spontaneously plan a date night with Blaise, where she was going to cook, where she wanted to do the paint and sip, I believe Nigella calls it. Painting with a twist, I believe it is. And that's the where you paint and drink and have alcohol. But according to Nigella, they weren't going to have any alcohol because remember, even Nigella is going to tell you that she knew Blaise did not drink. And so, as she planned this date spontaneously, she reaches out to Blaise around noon that day. He didn't know that she was going to call him. And says, hey, what are you doing tonight? Will you be free? And he says, yeah, what do you want to do? What's going on? It was a little cold that day, so he wanted to know, what did you want to do? What should I wear? She says, dress comfortably and come to the house around 7. And he says, sure, I can do that. Now, what you hear when she was planning this date night, she was planning it with Nigella. What should I cook and what should we do? And Nigella says, well, I want some chicken Alfredo. So why don't you cook that? And Jade says, okay, that sounds good. Now, what's important to know is that Jade was a very ambitious young lady, and she had her own business, JTP Eatery, which was like a small catering company. And when she would cook, you'll learn that some of her food would be infused with marijuana. In fact, you'll hear that her chicken Alfredo she would sell would be infused with marijuana. And cookies and brownies and things of that sort. So she makes the decision to have this date night with Blaise, and she and Nigella talk about it. And then at that point, Nigella says, well, I want some chicken Alfredo too. And Jade says, well, I'll put you some up for tomorrow. But Nigella says, and now we're in the bucket of jury, just so that you're oriented. Nigella says, well, no, I want to come tonight. Even though she's planning a date night with Blaise. She's now inviting herself into Jade's date night. And so she shows up, I would say, we know around 7:22 she sends a message, I'm on my way. And when she gets there, she brings a friend, Keontae, and she tells Jade, I want to bring Keontae too, because he wants some too. So we're both going to come into your date night. And they show up, and they stay there. But not for long. But what you'll hear is that when they showed up, Blaise invites them to stay. Hey, why don't you guys stay and play cards? And he had a deck of Uno cards that he was playing with. And he says, let's play Uno. And then he asks, well, do you guys know how to play spades? And Nigella says, no, I don't know how to play spades. And so he says, well, you guys should stay, hang out. But Nigella says, well, no, I don't want to intrude. We'll leave. And so we know that by 8:03, she was gone. Because she sends this text after spending that 20 minutes or so with Jade and Blaise. That was a cute interaction. What you won't hear is that she sent any text as if there was anything nefarious going on. You will hear that she describes that moment as a cute interaction. And you'll hear that Jade responds and says, yes, Blaise says, we should hang out again, or you guys should have stayed. And Nigella responds, well, no, I did not want to intrude on your date night, so we left. Fast forward to about 9:28. So this interchange went on from about 8:03 until about 8:12. Then you'll know about 9:28, what you're going to find is that Jade and Blaise, specifically Jade, was taking selfies with Blaise. And you'll find that the selfies were them kissing and laughing and joking and having a great time. You'll see those photos. And you'll see that they were taken from Jade's phone. But then less than a minute later, you'll hear that Nigella gets this call. And the call, I want to make sure that I say it right. The call, less than 60 seconds later, Nigella describes it as, it was the most wimpiest voice I've ever heard. Those were her words. The scariest thing I've ever heard. She was freaking out. I never heard anything like it. She was fighting for her life. It was as if she was in danger. She says that she overheard her saying, you put something in my drink. What did you put in my drink? But what you'll learn is that when Jade is making these accusations per Nigeria, that Nigeria sends a text back saying, "Are you talking to me?" So when Jade is making these accusations, Nigeria's response is, "Oh, are you talking to me?" You won't hear that she says, "What are you talking about? Who are you talking to?" You're going to hear that her response to those allegations are you talking to me? Within that moment, as they are describing, it was as if she was in danger and she was alone, per Nigeria, in the apartment with the man that Nigeria says was trying to kill her best friend. Nigeria never calls 911. Never. Instead, she says that as Jade's voice was whimpering and going down and as if she was going to pass out, that Jade had enough voice to say, "Call Keontae. Call Keontae on the three-way." But what you're going to find is that Nigeria says she really didn't know. Jade really didn't know Keontae. But according to Nigeria, Jade wants her to call Keontae. You won't hear her say that Jade wanted her to call 911 or call her father. But she wants her to call the guy she doesn't really know on the three-way. And Nigeria says she does that. And after she calls the gentleman, Keontae, on the three-way, what you'll hear about Keontae is that he will tell you, "Yes, I was on the call." And her voice was, Jade's voice wasn't really, I couldn't really make things out. But I didn't hear the things that Nigeria said. I didn't hear those things. And what you'll also find is that with all the danger that Nigeria described, all these fear and everything that her best friend was going through, Keontae didn't call 911 either. What you're going to find is that there was only one person that night that called 911. Because Jade didn't call 911 either. You'll hear that with all of this medical emergency, all of these things that were going on with this young lady, there was only one person who called the police, who called for help. And that was Blaise. And you'll hear the 911, I promise you. And you'll have the opportunity to hear everything that he said and everything that he did. But you won't hear one 911 call between Jade, Nigeria, or Keontae. And you'll hear the panic in Blaise's voice. You'll hear where he's running around trying to find the address. Because he didn't know the address by heart that way, just like Nigeria didn't know the address. Because later you'll find that the police asked Nigeria for the address too. And remember, she had just been there earlier, and she had to call to get the address. And you'll hear that eventually EMS showed up. And what's very important to know is that when EMS shows up and they get in that apartment 107, Jade was in a significant or stable enough condition that they did not perform CPR inside of the apartment. So you'll hear that whatever stress, whatever condition Jade was in, it wasn't significant enough for EMS to begin CPR right then at that moment. And those medical professionals will have to tell you that if it was dire enough that way, they would have had to give her CPR right then and there. They will tell you that. They will tell you that if the stress and condition that that young lady was in was so dire, they would not have waited to give her CPR once they got her on the back of the ambulance truck. So then you'll hear that Blaise was the one who ran out and met the ambulance outside and showed them where the apartment was. Because the apartment is such that you're really not going to know where the apartment is unless someone kind of directs you. So you'll hear that he went out and did that. And you'll hear that he never went back upstairs after EMS got there. When EMS left, he did too. And by then you'll hear that Jade was there, and she too followed the ambulance truck. And when they get to the hospital, it was Blaise who showed and helped Jade park. And so they go into the hospital, they rush Jade in. She's in critical condition by this time. And Vanderbilt is doing everything they can to give her the services that they need, that she needs. And you'll hear that Jade in the hospital starts with these allegations. This is where Jade starts telling the social worker there at Vanderbilt. Blaise did something to her. Blaise put something in her drink, and these are the things that she was saying. And the investigation begins. And now we're at after. Oh, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. And then you'll hear that while they're at the hospital, Blaise never leaves. He stays there the entire time. When her mother calls, he answers the phone. When the police questions him, he answers the questions. When another police officer questions him, he answers those questions. When another police officer questions him, he answers those questions. You'll hear that he cooperated with every authority there. And not one time, while he was at the hospital being questioned, being accused of being the person who caused this, did he ask for a lawyer? Did he exercise his right to the Fifth Amendment? Not one time. He did what he thought you would hear that he was supposed to do. But what you'll hear with Jade is that at some point during the night, she's questioned as well. And you'll hear that those police officers tells her, we need to talk to this Keontae guy too, for obvious reasons. And you'll hear that Keontae, although he comes to the hospital, he meets Jade in the parking lot. And you'll hear that when police officers have told her, we need to talk to this guy, she doesn't alert the police officers that he even showed up. She doesn't tell them that, hey, that witness to my best friend's medical episode, he's in the parking lot, come get his story. Instead, you will hear that she talks to him and then he leaves without talking to anyone, without giving anyone the side of his story of what happened. You'll also hear that she left again. And what's important to know is this, that you'll hear by this time, that apartment, based on Jade's allegations, is a crime scene. And that even though it's a crime scene, and that even though Officer Fish, who was one of the initial responding officers, told Jade Benning's stepmother and mother someone Nigella was in constant contact with throughout the night, as you can imagine. Nobody in that apartment, nobody out. It's shut down. It is a crime scene. There should be no one in that place. We need to go in there and figure out what happened. You're going to hear that Jade's friend, Lauren Weber, Nigella's friend, Lauren Weber, and another young lady went inside that apartment anyway. And that even though they weren't supposed to go in there and touch him, that she removed items out of that apartment, she locked it up, and then she brought her, Jade's purse and ID to the hospital. And you're going to hear that when the police officers hear this, and they learn that some people had entered this crime scene, that they said that that crime scene was contaminated. You'll hear that law enforcement says that themselves. And then you're going to hear that Nigella and 3 more other people went inside that apartment with gloves on and removed crucial evidence and kept it for 24 hours before they turned it over to the police. They gave it to her mother. Evidence of the crime, they grabbed it, removed it, and kept it. You're going to hear now one time when Nigella was speaking to those police officers, did she tell them, hey, I'm about to go over here to Jade's house, you know, the crime scene, and we're going to go over there and help you guys out and remove evidence for you. She never says that. She never tells them that. They have to find that out through Jade's mother. You're going to also find that Nigella had Jade's phone during this time and had gone into the phone. And we know that it couldn't have been Jade because by now Jade was in critical condition and in a coma and was manipulating through the phone. And so you hear that at some point Nigella leaves the hospital, but Blaise is still there. And he doesn't leave until Jade's mother gets there. And that you'll hear that he helped her find a parking space too. He ran out there and said, you know, save the parking space as well. And you'll hear by now it's over. Jade is in critical condition. She's pretty much on life support. She had suffered a significant brain injury as a result of losing oxygen to the body. And you'll hear that there was, in fact, laboratory evidence, the blood, the urine. You're going to hear a lot of stuff about that. And yes, you're going to hear that there was an awful amount of cocaine in her system. But what you're going to hear is that the integrity of those vials of blood and urine were such that the results of those blood tests does not make sense. The experts are going to have to tell you that it was too much cocaine for Jade to take on her own, and too much cocaine for Blaise to have slipped in a drink and her not notice. But you're going to hear there are so many issues with the way the lab dealt with that, that there's not a medical professional alive who would rely on those results. They're going to have to tell you that. But what they are going to have to tell you is this, as a result of those toxicology results, is that in Jade's system was cocaethylene. And you're going to learn that cocaethylene is where cocaine and alcohol meets up in your system at the same time. You're going to hear that there is no other way the metabolite cocaethylene can appear. No way. You can't have taken alcohol at 7 o'clock and then did a bump of cocaine at 9 and you form cocaine. You're going to hear that you can't take a drink of alcohol at 7:30 and take a bump of cocaine at 8. It has to be at the same time that cocaethylene was present in Jade's system. And you're going to hear that it was at levels such that it would have had to have been some time that had passed for it to be there in the fashion that it was. You're going to hear that at the end of this, that the medical examiner, Dr. Carney, Dr. Aaron Carney, performed the autopsy on Jade Benning. And what you'll learn is that an autopsy is, what they like to say is that it's not done in a vacuum. And what that basically means is you can't just look at the body to determine what happened. You have to factor in surrounding circumstances as well. And what you'll learn is that there are two things that the medical examiner is responsible for doing: determining the cause of death and the manner of death. The cause of death is going to be the medical issue that caused you to die. And the manner of death, you'll learn, to be only 5 things. It can be natural causes, accident, it could be undetermined, it could be homicide, and it could be suicide. It's going to always fall in one of those 5 buckets. And because it's not done in a vacuum, you have to look at the surrounding circumstances before you come to a conclusion as to which bucket those 5 land to. And what you're going to see is the medical examiner, the medical professional, the person that we rely on to come to a conclusion professionally as to what happened in regards to the manner of death for Ms. Benning. You're going to hear that even she could not come to the conclusion of homicide. And homicide just means you died at the hands of another. Doesn't necessarily mean a crime occurred. It just means that you died at the hands of another. You're going to hear that Dr. Carney is going to get on that stand. Remember, we talked about that's where your evidence will come from. And she's going to have to tell you, I cannot rule this a homicide. And the reason she's going to tell you she cannot rule this a homicide is because of the circumstances surrounding Ms. Benning's death. And that she ruled it undetermined. What that basically means is that she could not come to a conclusion. Now you will hear from Apple Denning. And Apple is someone that Blaise dated when he was in college, some 6 years before this happened. And you'll hear that Apple is from Arkansas, Jade is from Arkansas, Najee is from Arkansas, and a friend named Ariane Jordan is from Arkansas. And you'll hear that Ariane heard about Ms. Benning's death. She heard about the allegations that it was Najee who was saying it was Blaise that did it. And that within days of Ms. Benning's death, she told Apple. And you're going to hear that even though Apple says that Blaise was trying to poison Xavier Winford. She never goes to the police right then and there and says, Blaise was trying to kill someone else. Just like this situation. You're going to hear it with months before she gets back. But you're going to hear a lot of other things too about Ms. Benning. You're going to hear that just as recent as April of this year, that on her to-do list was to put Blaise in prison. And she posted it. You're going to hear that there were times that she felt, well, let me back that up. There are times that she made other false allegations against Blaise. And one of those allegations is going to be that while she was out of her apartment one day, Blaise had snuck in somehow when he was living in Tennessee and she was in Arkansas, and moved her bed over, or moved her furniture over a few inches, and then left. And she called the police to tell them. Blaise snuck in my apartment and moved my furniture to court and just to mess it. And that you'll hear that in spite of all of that she still said Blaise was the best thing that ever happened to her when it was appropriate to do so. And you'll hear just 2 weeks before this incident that she was on social media trying to determine who Blaise was dating. You'll learn that is Apple. So I don't want you to lose focus at the end of this trial. I want you to do what you promised you would do. That you will look at the facts of this case based on the allegations before you, and not things that the state throws in to give you a red herring to put on your heartstrings. Stay focused on the evidence about whether or not that at the end of the day, much like Dr. Carney, did you hear enough evidence, not whether it's sad and tragic, because it is, that a young lady lost her life. Because I also want you to know, and I almost failed to forget to tell you this, that there was also fentanyl found in this Benning system, not just that at the end of the trial, in the same way that Dr. Carney cannot rule this a homicide, you can realistically, honestly, to lay your head down at night, get to the conclusion that it was Blaise Taylor who caused Ms. Benning's death. Because when you think about before, during, and after, because whenever it's a circumstantial case, that's what you have to do, that there's nothing that will lead you to a conclusion that beyond a reasonable doubt that it was Blaise Taylor who caused it. And so I'm asking, Blaise Taylor is asking, his family is asking, and justice is asking to find him not guilty. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, not at my request, but at the attorney's request, they want a short break before witnesses begin. So we'll step down the hallway for 6 minutes. Everybody will just remain where you are. You came, you will stay. While the jury's exiting. cool camera is cut off for audio situation during all breaks, and whenever the court is not on the bench and the only visual is the court seal.
Thank you.
6 minutes.
Court's in a recess.